On a distant planet, the sky was filled with smoke and fire. An intense battle raged between human soldiers and an alien army. The soldiers fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. The aliens were strong and had powerful weapons. Among the chaos, one soldier named Captain Mark Thompson spotted something unusual in the rubble. As he got closer, Mark's heart raced. There, in a small, broken pod, lay an alien baby. The child was small, with green skin and big, shining eyes. It looked frightened and alone. Mark felt a wave of compassion wash over him. How could anyone leave a baby in such a dangerous place? The sounds of war surrounded them, but all he could hear was the soft whimper of the child. "Lieutenant, over here!" Mark shouted to his partner, Sarah. She ran to his side, her expression shifting from worry to surprise. "What is it?" she asked. Mark pointed to the pod, his heart aching for the little one. "We need to save this baby." Sarah looked around at the ongoing battle. "But it's risky! We could get killed!" she replied, glancing back at the firing lasers and explosions. "I know," Mark said, determination in his voice, "but we can't leave it behind. It needs us." With that, Mark carefully opened the pod. The alien baby blinked up at him, and Mark felt a connection like never before. He reached in and gently lifted the child into his arms. The baby cooed softly, reaching out for him. It was a small, beautiful creature, and in that moment, Mark felt a surge of hope amidst the chaos. "Let's get out of here," Sarah urged, glancing nervously at the ongoing fight. They needed to find safety quickly. Together, they dashed through the ruins, carrying the baby close to their hearts. Mark's mind raced with thoughts of how to protect this innocent life. As they ran, they faced many dangers. Alien soldiers shouted and fired their weapons, but Mark and Sarah moved swiftly, dodging blasts and hiding behind debris. They were fueled by a fierce determination to keep the baby safe. Every time they heard a blast, Mark tightened his grip on the little one, promising silently to protect her. Finally, they reached their command ship, where other soldiers were waiting. "We found her!" Mark shouted, holding up the baby. The other soldiers stared in disbelief. "You brought back an alien baby?" one soldier asked, a mix of confusion and concern on his face. "Yes," Mark replied, urgency in his voice. "We can't leave her here. She deserves a chance at life. We have to take her to Earth." The room fell silent. Some soldiers exchanged glances, unsure about the plan. They knew the risks of bringing an alien child back to their home planet. But their commander, Colonel James Harris, stepped forward. "We have to make a decision," he said firmly. "We can't abandon her. If we don't take her, she'll die here." His words were filled with authority, and the other soldiers nodded, realizing the truth. The baby deserved a chance. Mark looked down at the child who had calmed down in his arms. She gazed up at him, her big eyes filled with trust. "We'll call her Ara," he decided. "It means brave in our language." The name felt right, and Mark smiled at the baby. The command ship took off into space, leaving the war-torn planet behind. As they flew, Ara fell asleep in Mark's arms, her little fingers curled around his finger. Mark felt a deep sense of responsibility for her. He vowed to protect Ara no matter what challenges lay ahead. Back on Earth, they would face questions and concerns about bringing an alien child into their midst. But for now, in this moment, there was peace. The war was far away, and all that mattered was the tiny life they had saved. As the stars sparkled outside the ship, Mark knew that Ara would grow up surrounded by love and safety, far from the violence of her world. He glanced at Sarah, who was smiling. "We did the right thing, Mark," she said softly. He nodded, his heart filled with hope. They had saved a life, and in doing so, they had found a new purpose. Together, they would raise Ara as one of their own, and she would learn the values of humanity. The journey ahead would be long and difficult, but they were ready for it. Years passed, and the little alien girl named Ara grew up in a world filled with love and laughter. She lived in a special facility designed for her care and education. Mark and Sarah became like parents to her, teaching her everything about being human. Ara thrived in this new environment, surrounded by friends and family who adored her. From the very beginning, Ara was curious about everything. She loved to explore the big, bright world around her. Her green skin and big, bright eyes made her stand out among the other children, but Ara never felt different. Mark and Sarah taught her that everyone is special in their own way. They encouraged her to be proud of who she was, and Ara embraced her uniqueness. Every morning, Ara woke up excited to learn something new. She loved going to school with other children. The school was a colorful place filled with laughter, games, and lessons about math, science, and history. Ara was a fast learner, picking up new things quickly. Her teachers often praised her for her intelligence, and she beamed with pride. She loved to read books about heroes and adventures, dreaming of becoming a great protector one day. However, growing up was not always easy for Ara. Some kids at school were curious, but also a little scared of her. They whispered and pointed, wondering why she looked different. Ara sometimes felt sad when they stared, but she remembered what Mark and Sarah had taught her. "Just be yourself, Ara. You are loved," they said. With their words in her heart, she focused on making friends. Ara found joy in playing games with her classmates. She was surprisingly strong for her age, and during recess she could run faster and jump higher than anyone else. She loved playing tag, where she often chased her friends with laughter. The other kids soon learned that Ara was not just an alien, she was their friend, full of energy and kindness. As the days went by, Ara's natural charm won over her classmates, and soon they saw her as one of their own. At home, Ara and Mark shared special moments together. Mark would tell her stories about the adventures he had during the war. He spoke of bravery and loyalty, and Ara listened with wide eyes. She admired him and wanted to be just like him. "When I grow up, I want to protect everyone, just like you," Ara said, determination shining in her eyes. Mark smiled warmly and replied, "You can do anything you set your mind to, Ara. Remember, being brave is not just about strength. It's about having a good heart." His words inspired her, and she began to imagine a future where she could be a hero, fighting for justice and helping those in need. As Ara grew older, she also learned about human emotions. She experienced joy during celebrations and felt sadness when she saw others in pain. One day she witnessed a friend fall and scrape their knee. Instead of running away, Ara rushed to help. She comforted her friend, wiped away tears, and promised everything would be okay. Her kindness touched everyone, showing them that she understood their feelings deeply. Mark and Sarah encouraged Ara to explore her alien heritage as well. They taught her about her unique abilities and how to control them. Ara learned to harness her strength, agility, and even some strange powers she had yet to understand fully. Mark guided her through training sessions, helping her develop her skills in a safe and fun way. Ara was eager to learn, and her enthusiasm drove her to become better every day. Despite her impressive abilities, Ara remained humble. She never used her powers to show off or seek attention. Instead, she focused on helping others. Whenever someone needed assistance, Ara was always the first to lend a hand. Her heart was filled with love for humanity, and she wanted to give back to the world that had embraced her. As the years went by, Ara grew into a strong and caring young woman. She became a symbol of hope in her community, inspiring others with her compassion and bravery. Mark and Sarah watched with pride as their daughter flourished, knowing that they had given her a safe and loving home. However, deep inside, Ara often felt a pull towards her alien origins. She knew that she was different, but chose to embrace her human family and their values. Little did she know that her journey was far from over and that her true purpose awaited her on the horizon. One sunny afternoon, Ara sat in her room, surrounded by colorful books and toys. She loved her life on Earth, filled with laughter and adventure. But deep down, she felt a strange sense of something looming, like a storm on the horizon. That feeling nagged at her more and more, and she couldn't shake it off. After school, Ara decided to explore the small forest near her home. She often went there to think and connect with nature. The trees swayed gently in the wind, and Thung was not right. Suddenly, she noticed a flickering light in the distance. Curious, she hurried toward it. As she approached, she saw a glowing object hidden behind some bushes. It looked like a small device, and when she picked it up, it began to emit a series of beeping sounds. Ara's heart raced. She had never seen anything like this before. She pressed a button on the device, and a holographic image sprang to life before her eyes. It showed a group of alien soldiers marching, their eyes filled with anger. A voice echoed, sounding urgent and fierce. "We must reclaim our lost child. The Earth is weak, and we will take Ara back," E-birds chirped happily. As she walked, Ara felt a sudden chill in the air. The leaves rustled, and she shivered, sensing something. Ara's heart sank. This was a message from her home planet, a call to arms. The realization hit her hard. Her alien race wanted her back, and they planned to invade Earth to get her. Fear coursed through her veins. What would happen to her human family? Would they be safe? Without wasting a moment, Ara rushed home. She burst through the door, finding Mark and Sarah in the living room. "I found something! You need to see this!" she shouted, her voice trembling. They looked at her with concern as she handed them the device. "What is it, Ara?" Sarah asked, studying the glowing object. Ara took a deep breath. "It's a message from my people. They want to take me back. They're coming to invade Earth!" Mark's eyes widened as he listened to the recording, and a heavy silence filled the room. "We need to tell Colonel Harris," he said, his voice serious. They quickly gathered their things and headed to the military base. Ara's heart raced, not just with fear, but with determination. She would protect her home and family at any cost. When they arrived at the base, they found Colonel Harris discussing plans with other officers. Mark stepped forward, holding the device. "Colonel, we have a serious situation," he said urgently. Ara watched as Harris listened closely, his face growing grave as he heard the message. "This is troubling," Harris replied, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "If they want Ara back, they might not come in peace. We must prepare for an attack." The room filled with discussions and plans, and Ara felt a mixture of fear and excitement. She wanted to fight for her home, but what if her own people came for her? That night, Ara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Images of her alien family filled her thoughts. What if they really came? Would she have to choose between her two worlds? She loved her human family deeply, but a part of her longed to know her origins. The next morning, Colonel Harris called for a meeting with the entire military team. Ara sat with Mark and Sarah, listening intently. Harris explained the situation and the need for everyone to prepare. "We must work together to defend our home. Ara, you know your people better than anyone. We need your help to understand them and find their weaknesses." Ara nodded, feeling a sense of responsibility. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect Earth," she promised, her voice steady. The soldiers looked at her with respect, seeing her as a bridge between two worlds. Days turned into weeks as preparations for the invasion began. Ara trained alongside the soldiers, learning combat techniques and strategies. She was determined to show everyone that she was not just an alien, she was one of them, ready to defend her new home. But deep inside, the conflict gnawed at her. Would she be forced to confront her own people? What if they saw her as a traitor? The thought weighed heavily on her heart. Ara knew she had to be strong. She had found love and acceptance on Earth, and she would fight to protect it. As the days passed, the tension grew. The dark message loomed over them like a storm cloud, ready to unleash chaos. Ara's resolve hardened. She would stand with her human family against the threat, no matter the cost. With her heart full of courage, she prepared for the battle ahead, knowing that the fight for her future had just begun. The day of the invasion arrived with an eerie calm. Ara stood on the edge of the military base, looking out at the clear blue sky. It seemed like any other day, but deep inside her a storm of emotions brewed. She had trained hard and was ready, but doubt lingered. Would she really have to fight against her own kind? As the sun began to rise, the alarms blared across the base. Red lights flashed and soldiers rushed to their positions. Ara felt a surge of adrenaline as she ran to join them, her heart pounding in her chest. "They're here!" someone shouted. Ara's stomach dropped. This was the moment they had prepared for, but she had never imagined it would feel like this. The horizon darkened as ships descended from the sky, enormous and terrifying. They glimmered like silver monsters against the morning light. Ara could see soldiers marching out of the ships, their green skin and armored suits striking fear into her heart. They looked fierce and ready to battle, their eyes scanning the area for any sign of her. Colonel Harris stood at the front lines, his voice steady as he shouted orders. "All units, prepare for combat! Defend our territory! We will not let them take Ara." The soldiers formed ranks, their faces filled with determination. Ara felt a rush of pride for her human family, but also a deep sadness. These were her people too, and they didn't know what they were really fighting against. Ara joined the front lines alongside Mark and Sarah. "Stay close," Mark said, gripping her shoulder. "We'll get through this together." Ara nodded, her resolve strengthening. She had to find a way to communicate with her alien family, to make them understand she didn't want to return. But how could she do that in the heat of battle? As the alien soldiers advanced, the air filled with tension. The first blast of energy weapons erupted, lighting up the sky in brilliant colors. The humans fought back fiercely, returning fire with everything they had. Era watched as explosions rocked the ground, and dust and smoke filled the air. The chaos around her was overwhelming, but she couldn't let fear take hold. She had to focus. "Look!" Sarah shouted, pointing to the center of the alien line. Ara squinted through the smoke and saw a figure standing out among the soldiers. It was a commander, larger and more imposing than the others. "That must be their leader," Mark said, his voice urgent. "If we can take him down, it might cause confusion among their ranks." Ara felt a flicker of hope. If she could get to that commander and talk to him, maybe she could convince him to call off the attack. It was a dangerous plan, but she knew she had to try. "I'll go," Ara declared, determination shining in her eyes. Mark and Sarah exchanged worried glances, but they knew she was right. "Be careful, Ara," Sarah pleaded. "We'll cover you as best we can." Ara nodded, feeling the weight of their support behind her. She dashed forward, moving through the chaos with agility and speed. The sounds of battle surrounded her, explosions, shouts, and the crackle of energy weapons. As she neared the alien commander, Ara's heart raced. The commander was shouting orders, his voice booming over the chaos. She needed to get his attention. Taking a deep breath, Ara called out, "Wait! I am Ara. I am not your enemy." The commander turned, his fierce gaze locking onto her. The fighting slowed for a moment as soldiers paused, unsure of what to do. Ara stood tall, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside her. "I am one of you. I don't want to return. We can talk." The commander's expression shifted, confusion flickering across his face. The soldiers around him hesitated, glancing at each other. Ara saw an opening. "I was raised by humans. They are my family now. We can find peace. Please." For a brief moment, silence fell over the battlefield. The soldiers exchanged uneasy looks, torn between their loyalty to their commander and the strange plea of the girl who had grown up among humans. The commander hesitated, his hand hovering over his weapon. Then, from behind her, a blast of energy fired. Ara turned just in time to see a soldier fall, and chaos erupted again. The commander roared in anger, rallying his troops. "Advance! Show no mercy!" With that command, the battle reignited, and the alien soldiers surged forward once more. Ara's heart sank. She had failed to reach him. Desperation surged through her as she fought alongside her human family. She realized that words alone might not be enough to stop the fight. But she would not give up. She would find another way. Ara fought with all her strength, determination fueling her every move. She knew that somehow she had to protect her home and her family, even if it meant facing the very people she came from. The battle raged on, and Ara was determined to turn the tide. The battlefield was chaos, filled with smoke, flashes of light, and the sounds of destruction. Ara fought alongside her human family, her heart pounding. She felt a mix of fear and determination. This was the moment of truth, and she knew it was now or never. As the alien forces pressed forward, Ara took a deep breath and scanned the area. She had to find a way to stop the fighting. The commander was still out there, rallying his troops with fierce shouts. She remembered his hesitation and knew he could be swayed again. But how? "Focus, Ara!" Mark shouted, pulling her back to the present. "We need to hold the line." She nodded, shaking off her doubts. They needed to survive this battle first. Together, they pushed back against the alien soldiers, firing their weapons and dodging blasts. In the thick of it, Ara spotted a small group of soldiers pinned down behind a barricade. They were struggling, their faces pale with fear. Without thinking, she rushed over to help them. "Get to safety!" she shouted, providing cover as they scrambled to their feet. She could not let anyone else fall today. Just as they began to retreat, a blast of energy flew past Ara, narrowly missing her. She turned to see an alien soldier aiming at her. Her heart raced as she ducked behind the barricade, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We can't keep this up forever!" she shouted to her friends. "Then we need a plan!" Sarah yelled back, her eyes fierce. "We can't let them take Ara back! We fight for Earth!" As if on cue, Ara remembered the device she had found in the forest. "The communicator!" she exclaimed, reaching into her pocket. "I can try to contact the commander again." Mark's eyes widened. "Are you sure that's safe?" "I have to try," Ara insisted. She pulled out the device, its lights still blinking from earlier. If I can reach him, maybe I can make him see that we can work together. With the device in hand, Ara took a deep breath and rushed toward the heart of the battlefield. Energy blasts whizzed past her, but she focused on the glowing figure of the alien commander, still issuing orders to his troops. "Commander!" Ara shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos. The commander turned, surprised to see her again. "Please listen! We don't have to fight! We can find a way to stop this." He hesitated, his fierce expression faltering. The soldiers around him looked uncertain, shifting nervously. "You are human now!" he shouted, his voice filled with anger. "Why would you side with them?" "Because they are my family," Ara cried out, holding the communicator high. "I was raised by them. They love me, and I love them. This war is unnecessary. We can have peace." For a moment, the battlefield fell silent. Both sides paused, caught in the tension of Ara's words. She could feel the weight of their gazes, the fear and confusion hanging thick in the air. Suddenly, a loud explosion shook the ground, breaking the silence. The commander's face twisted in anger, and he pointed toward Ara. "Enough of this! Show no mercy!" With that command, the alien soldiers surged forward again, and chaos erupted once more. Ara's heart sank. She had tried, but now it seemed hopeless. In that moment, something shifted inside her. "No!" she shouted, feeling a surge of power. "We will not let this continue!" She raised the communicator and activated it, sending a signal that echoed across the battlefield. "This is Ara! I am calling for peace." The signal spread, reaching both human and alien soldiers. The chaos slowed as soldiers began to hear her voice. "We are stronger together! We do not need to fight!" Ara's voice rang out, filled with hope and determination. "We can build a future where we live side by side. Listen to me!" Slowly, the soldiers began to lower their weapons, confusion and uncertainty spreading among them. The commander's fierce expression softened as he stared at Ara, realizing she was not just a human. She was a bridge between two worlds. Finally, with a deep breath, the commander stepped forward. "Enough!" he roared, his voice echoing across the battlefield. "We will listen to this child. Let us speak." With those words, the tide turned. Soldiers on both sides began to lower their weapons, and silence fell over the battlefield. Ara felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had done it. She had found a way to unite both sides. The fight was over, and she had saved her family, both human and alien. In that moment, Ara realized that love and understanding could conquer even the fiercest of battles. Together, they would forge a new path forward, one filled with hope and unity. The final stand had become a stand for peace.